So today's project, we're going to cover sprouted wheat pretzels. And what we have is basically a play on an original classic. I'm starting here with a King Arthur all-purpose flour. I've got an sprouted wheat flour. I've got my salt, my instant yeast, some malt, and butter that will go in right from the initial mixing. Then what we did is we prepped a soaker of grains, which is a King Arthur product, but it can be any cereal grain mix that you soak in a 1-to-1 portion of water to the grain and let sit overnight. And then we're working with cold water. I would recommend about 60-degree water, and we're going to mix this on a mixer for 4 minutes on first speed, and then we're going to increase that speed to second speed till we get a full gluten development. One thing that I would encourage you as you're mixing your dough, if it feels slightly dry, to be willing to add a little bit more water. I always hold back just a little bit of water so that I can add that during the mixing phase. And remember, water is always a variable. You want to make sure that you get your dough properly hydrated during the initial mix phase. So after the first speed mixing phase, your dough should be nice and homogeneous, but with no gluten or very little gluten development. We then continue the mixing process on a medium speed setting till we have a nice gluten development. After the dough is finished mixing on second speed, we want to test to make sure that we have a fairly well-developed gluten structure. Again, understand that that sprouted grain, due to the bran, is going to prohibit a perfect window. This looks nice. Then we add our soaker to the mix. And mixing again on first speed till it's properly incorporated. Now that the grains are properly incorporated, we want to take the dough out of the container, flour your surface, and then for dividing, what we want to do is we want to start with units at about 90 grams. And then we want to pre-shape them into logs. So after you've divided and pre-shaped, you're going to extend these right away. And I would recommend when you do this, try to keep the belly fatter than the ends. Get a nice taper going. And then you're going to make a loop, a large loop. Give it a twist. And then bring that twist forward. Compress and pick up and place on a parchment-lined sprayed sheet pan. So one thing that you want to do is mix the lye about 12 hours ahead of time. So you take your lye and you sprinkle it carefully into water because you don't want that dust to be airborne. And I use a ratio of 40 grams to 1,000 grams of water. And then you don't have to stir it, you can just let it dissolve in here naturally. And then again, give it due time so those crystals can dissolve. And then you're ready to dip in your lye bath. So one thing you also want to be cautious of is once you have lye submerged in the water, it becomes a caustic solution. So you want to be careful not to touch it with your bare hands, your skin obviously. Make sure you don't get in your eyes. Safety goggles or a pair of glasses will definitely help. Always keep it covered. And I always recommend if you're going to mix this the day ahead of production, make sure you store it on the bottom shelf somewhere down low in case you were to ever spill it. On the second day, or at least 4 hours into the cold fermentation process, you can finish your pretzels. So what I would recommend is, again, take them, make sure you have gloves on, put them upside down into the lye bath, again, making sure you've got your surfaces protected. Wear gloves, wear some eye protection, leave them in the lye bath for approximately 10 to 15 seconds. There's no need to flip them at this point. You're basically just going to put them in here and then take them out. At this point they're very slippery, and place them immediately into their final resting place because you won't be able to move them on the parchment paper. If you have a low grade quality parchment paper, I do encourage you to spray it with some hand release or use a silk pad for this process. For our braided pretzels, we're going to do the same thing. Dip them into your lye bath. Leave them in there, not too long because they're going to brown very quickly. Place them onto your parchment lined sheet pan. And then you can sprinkle them with some salt. I like to use a Malden sea salt, a flaked salt for this. I do encourage when you, again, do this, keep your hands covered so that you don't expose them to the lye. And as soon as you finish sprinkling the salt, they're ready for the oven. I would recommend baking the pretzels at about 360 degrees. And if you're going to have larger units like these, you might want to drop the oven temperature to about 350 to ensure proper baking all the way at the fatter end.